Give us a moment where you just were like, I want to kill these guys.
Yeah, I remember I thought my career was over. Seriously, not a joke.
Welcome, MythFits.
Hey there, it's the MythFits. Welcome to our podcast. My name is Kari Byron.
And I am Tory Belleci, and you know us from MythBusters.
You also may not know that Tory and I have been really good friends for the past 2 decades. And so we talk about weird theories and things that we find on the internet all the time. We are MythBusters for life.
Kari, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while.
I know, since last week.
What's going on?
I love this. I love having a weekly date with you. This is so much fun. I get to constantly keep up on your life. I just had dinner with some of the old MythBuster gang. Like I went to dinner with Lauren and Linda, and it's so fun to just like we always just fall into reminiscing about things, but also, talked a lot about just like strange things. Did you know, Lauren told me this, that they have discovered a new color?
What? What does that even mean?
Yeah, just researching how the cones in the eyes are. We all see color differently because our eyes are all different. But there is a new color that we can perceive that's it's a variation on green. I got to look up this article because we were just kind of BSing about, new weird science. And the fact that there is a new color blew me away.
Oh my God.
I had the big crayon box, the big one.
You didn't just melt them down? I used to just get my little torch and just melt all the crayons. My sister would get so mad because I would just ruin her crayon set.
I mean, I believe that. That completely tracks.
My dad's going to be really excited about this new color. I'm just kidding. He's colorblind.
I was like, that's cool.
Well, you were saying you saw Lauren and Linda. Last time I hung out with Linda, she pulled out her phone and started scrolling through it. And it was like all these photos that I had never seen before. And was literally going, when did that happen? And they're like, oh, she had all these details about all these moments that while we were filming, we were so focused on what we were doing that I just completely forgot all these memories.
Yeah, that's the thing about TV productions is you see the person on TV, but there's so much going on behind the scenes. Like when I used to watch those survival shows, I'd be like, he's climbing up a tree, which is super scary. And he's talking about how scared he is, but there's a cameraman above him, much higher, holding on while filming, and probably a sound guy. You go through all this stuff with other people. So there was definitely a gang that became family for us back in those days.
Yeah. And we still to this day, there's so many great friends that I've made from MythBusters, including you. Get to see you.
Well, speaking of that,
yeah,
I may have asked a special guest to come in today.
Oh, really?
It's somebody you know.
Ooh,
it's somebody you've known.
Guest?
Somebody you've known longer than you've known me.
Okay.
Somebody you've worked with in the past. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's Linda Wolkovich.
Hello. Hey. What's
Linda
happening?
Is one of the old school producers on MythBusters. She was there from the beginning. She is someone who has resourced the wildest things for us, and MythBusters could not have been made without her.
You're too kind.
She literally could source anything in the world. Linda, first of all, it's great to see you. How are you?
Tory, hi, I miss you.
I know.
Kari, I just saw you yesterday, so I don't miss you as much.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about MythBusters is we were all such good friends because it's we went through a decade together doing wild and weird stuff. So we all, a lot of us keep in touch. We're still in the same friend group.
Linda, you and I go way back to the ILM days. Now, if you're not a super nerd like us, Industrial Light and Magic, Lucasfilm, they did Star Wars. Anyway, we go back to those days.
I know. Is it last century? Is that how far we go back?
Oh, God. Let's not age ourselves.
Linda, when did you first meet Tory?
I met Tory probably in 2000, 99, 2000, something like that. Tori, does that sound right?
It sounds like, let's see, I started in 97, so it might
Okay.
have been even earlier, but
Earlier.
it wasn't until maybe it was Star Wars that you used to come through the model shop and just come and hang out. And, it was like all these like nerdy dudes. I mean, that's why we're there working on Star Wars, because that's our, our most, the movie that got us all into special effects. And so Linda, she's like this cute girl just walking through. She's like, hey. And so like all the nerd, like all of us were just like, Linda's here, Linda's here. Everyone would get all excited.
At the time, was Grant and Adam, were they all in the model shop too?
Yeah. Everyone was there. Grant and Adam and Tory. I felt super fortunate to be working with all these incredibly talented model makers, but not only were they super talented, it was just super fun. Like every day was fun. It was silly. It was creative. Every day was a new adventure. I never dreaded going to work at all, ever. I was always super excited because people always played pranks. I always learned stuff. But it was, Grant was there in his little white lab coat. Adam,
that's right.
Adam had his scissor lift toolbox, if I remember correctly. Do you remember that? He was kind of an accordion lift.
He acted like he had a TV show back then. I mean, he would just walk through the shop loud, and you would hear him from the other room. And you're like, "Oh, Adam's here."
Yep, and then there was you, and you were always so fun and friendly, and just always had a great time with you.
Do you have any good George Lucas stories?
I do have a good George Lucas story.
Yeah.
I am at one of the Halloween parties. So the big party every year at ILM was the Halloween party, and I actually did win a prize from George Lucas directly. I have a picture of him giving me a little kind of a little tag you would pin to your costume if he acknowledged that you did a good job, which is quite an honor considering the company, at that party. And I was a Medusa, like a very kind of elaborate Medusa.
I remember that costume. It was insane.
Yep. Thank you. So that was it. That was my only direct personal interaction with George.
I remember I brought my brother to one of those Halloween parties, which was a huge mistake.
Wow. Wait. You brought your brother to Lucas for a Halloween party? That would be so cool.
So I bring him there, and we're hanging out by the, there's like craft service, there's food everywhere, open bar. I mean, it was insane. And then George Lucas walks in. And so he's not in costume. And, everybody is told when you work at ILM, do not approach George Lucas, right? Like just leave him alone. If you see him, you could, smile, but don't go and approach him. Don't talk to him. And so my brother sees George Lucas, and for some reason he brought one of those old disposable Kodak cameras, the ones that we just go click. So he sees George Lucas, and George Lucas is at the table filling up his plate, like about to eat. And my brother's all, George, give me a picture. Let me take a picture. And George is like, no. And he's all, come on, George. And George does this look like, fine. And he like kind of does this weird pose. My brother takes this photo, and I still have this awkward photo. It's so bad. I'll send it to you. But so I'm like sitting there going, oh crap. Like I'm with him. I'm going to get fired. Like he completely just took a flash photo of George at this Halloween party. Everyone's all looking at us. And I'm like, Andrew, you are going to get me fired. So that was but now I have this really awkward picture of George Lucas.
That's awesome. I love that. All right. So Linda, when did you hear about the MythBusters job? Like, how did you transfer over to this?
So I was working in the model shop, and they were starting to phase the model shop out. So the ILM was going more digital than practical to some degree. And so they started kind of phasing out staff jobs. And so I was one of the folks that got phased out eventually. But then Adam reached out to me and said, hey, I hear you're available. Would you like to come work with me on this show that I'm doing? It's funny, like this is so long ago. I was trying to remember the actual first story that I worked on. And I just remember coming in, and there were chicken guts all over the shop walls. It stunk. And so that was definitely one of my first memories. And maybe it was just because it was an olfactory thing that it really just resonated in my brain. But yeah, it was the the chickens in the engines, or no, it was the windscreens. That was it. It was the chicken in the windscreens of airplane.
We know that all too well.
That's a very strong memory for me too, because we were shooting chickens through plate glass, and Tori and I were scraping it off the ceiling. This was before we were on camera. We were just scraping the chicken guts off the ceiling. And Tori's like, I used to work at ILM. I'm like, yep.
Well, because I think what had happened is they were testing it on actual airplane windshields, right? And then they got a lot of backlash. And so in season 2, when you and I officially joined, or at least when I officially joined, Kari, we retested it. And so we came up with this solution to stack a bunch of windshields or just plate glass. And so we just stacked them up, like 20 deep. And we started shooting the chickens through these frames of windows. But we never thought to cover the walls with any kind of plastic. And so the whole day we're just firing these things, and guts and chicken skin is just splattering all over the walls. And then at the end of the day, Jamie and I are like, okay, cool, we're going home. You guys clean up. And so Kari and I are sitting on a scissor lift on the roof, scraping guts and chicken parts off the roof. And we're just looking at each other. And that's when I said, I'm like, I left the movie industry to come do this.
Yeah, it wasn't very glamorous.
No, that job was never very glamorous. But for you, Linda, I think you probably have so many stories that you could barely resource. But like, what is the weirdest thing we've asked you to procure for us?
The weirdest, I would have to say, and the grossest, I think that, wins top both of those, was the anal expressions from dogs' butts that I had to get. It was a shark special, and we were trying to see if dog excretions attracted sharks in the water. And there were a lot of hurdles that, I figured, okay, then I could just canvass vets in the San Francisco area and collect this specimen in some kind of tube or whatever and bring it with me on the plane to where we were going. But then I realized it's biohazard. So then you can't bring biohazard on the plane. And what if they confiscate it? And so then I figured I had to source it locally. And so there was a lot of different steps to that. And it's never easy. It's always complicated. But I think the biohazards are probably the grossest things. I think the second grossest was the earwax, or the earwax candle.
Oh God, that was
which
so
was
disgusting.
Foul.
And then we lit it on fire. We were trying to make a candle. Because it was from the movie Shrek. And so we collected all this earwax, formed a candle around a wick, and lit it. And that was probably one of the foulest things I've ever smelled. Like, everybody was gagging or throwing up.
I will tell you what was, always there's stuff leading up to that part. And I had to drive around to all the ear, nose, and throat doctors in San Francisco because I had them collecting all the stuff they pulled out of their patients' ears, which is every color of the rainbow, if you remember correctly.
Yes.
And so they would put it in these little, prescription bottles or bigger ones, and you could shake it, and it just sounded crunchy and clicky and gross. And it was all these different colors. And I remember one doctor's office, when I went to go pick it up, they put it in a Panda Express Chinese food bag and handed it to me. And I just remember when we lit the candle, it kind of crackled and popped a little bit. And knowing what it was probably one of the foulest moments.
But do you remember how bad it smelled? Like, it was the most disgusting thing I've ever smelled. What was the hardest thing that you've ever had to source? Because you would be able to pull, like, the most ridiculous things that we were testing, and it was just like, oh, okay, we need a fuselage of an old Cessna plane or whatever, and you would be able to pull it out of thin air. What was the hardest thing that you ever sourced?
Finding one of the most difficult things, but longest lasting relationships was with New Mexico Tech. When we're trying to find a rocket sled or hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives and things like that. So I remember, I believe the first time I reached out to them, we were doing surfing with dynamite. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, totally.
And we had to create a surfable wave using dynamite, and we were on a pond or quarry lake. And I wanted to find an underwater explosives expert. And so I was, just calling everywhere to try to find it. It's a very obscure thing. And I finally called New Mexico Tech and found Graham Walsh, Dr. Graham Walsh. She became quite a regular on the program. And after the fact, I remember discovering that Graham had no idea about underwater explosions. He was just a generalist, but Van had promoted him to us as this unbelievable underwater explosives experts, which he then became because he wrote a paper on all the stuff that we were doing. And that was one of the neat things too, is that all of us became published authors because we participated in these experiments that got written up in explosives journals and whatnot.
So he didn't know how that was going to go. What if that went horribly, horribly wrong, doing a giant explosion underwater?
Well,
oh my God.
I mean, nothing ever went horribly, horribly wrong doing explosions, did it, Kari and Tory? I mean, ever?
It all went smoothly. But I remember what we learned from that was, because we were going to have some cameramen in the water to get the shots, and they were like, no, you cannot, because when an explosion goes off underwater, the shock wave, because water doesn't compress, the shock wave, when it hits a human body, it will just ravage the soft tissue and the organs inside the body, and you'll die like a few days later. And so that was something that we were all just like, oh my God, like it's so good that we had these experts so we didn't kill any of our crew member. And you know what? I feel like we found out really early on in the show that if you wanted to do something super dangerous, super illegal, to get the FBI involved, and then they would let you do whatever you wanted. Like that was when the first time we used AMFO was with Frank, and he filled up the cement truck with 800 pounds of AMFO. And that was the first time we'd ever been exposed to high explosives like that.
Yeah, that was absolutely all due to Frank and his relationships with the bomb techs out at Angels Camp and Carson Hill at the quarry out there. And we anticipated a lot of things. And I remember, I think we were at least like a mile and a half away when that explosion went off. And so we did anticipate the distance, but what we didn't anticipate is all the shrapnel. Do you remember from the truck
we were literally a mile away. I remember he was like, we need to be 1 mile away. So the quarry was on top of a mountain, and we were like across the lake at like a rest station. So we thought safe.
Right. But and we were from that, although I did feel like a sock in the gut when the blast wave came toward us. I do remember that. But what also happened was that all the shrapnel from the cement truck went all over the quarry and created all these really sharp metal shards everywhere over there. And we, the generous folks, the Sutton brothers at Carson Hill, drove over it with big tractors and vehicles that had magnets on it to pick up all the metal shrapnel, so we didn't have to do it. And so there were a lot of moments like that where people went above and beyond to help us with the aftermath of things that people, we didn't think about necessarily because no one had done the stuff we did before.
But do you remember when we were standing in the parking lot, all of a sudden these two fishermen were on the lake and pulled up to where the quarry was, and they were like, because they saw all the cameras, they saw all this, things set up, and they were like, what's going on? What's going on? I remember, I don't know if it was you or Frank Doyle grabbed the blowhorn and was like, get the hell out of there. You're right next to an explosive.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was Frank and that was Blaine. Just trying to get them, and they're just like, floating around like,
looky-loos. What are they doing up there? You guys are about to get killed.
Yeah, I think the technical term for them was bogeys, if I remember.
That was all of our first explosions. Like the very first time that we did a big explosion on the show, and it kind of defined the show from then on. Like if anything was boring or we couldn't figure something out, we would just blow it up. But I remember that was a little bit of a toughy shoot because there's a little mishap with the cameraman. As far as jobs go for cameramen, this was quite a weird job. Like we don't know what to expect. Things were kind of huge, and it was, I don't think he had done anything like this before, but he was our high-speed camera operator, and he was at that point, these high-speed cameras, you had to push a button right after whatever the event was to capture what happened before it. So if you didn't push the button soon enough, like you wouldn't get the shot.
The high-speed cameras back then were just constantly rolling. So as soon as the bomb would go off, you had a few seconds to hit it so that you would capture. So it was like this reverse engineering of catching the moment. And I just remember Linda going, "Did you get the shot?" And there was dead silence over the radio. And you're like, and then he said something and you're like, I can't say that again. Come again. Did you get the shot? And he went, "No, I didn't get it." And all of us were just like, no.
Yeah, I think a lot of people didn't realize when they watched the episode that we don't have the high-speed shot in the episode, that we had to just use other footage that we have. But also, I was pretty sympathetic to him because we were, a mile and a half away, but he was closer all by himself on a cliff edge, really. And it was pretty terrifying, us being all together with the bomb experts and whatnot. But here was poor on his own with the monitor, just waiting to press the button. So I can understand why that would have happened. I probably would have done the same thing. So no hard feelings. That was a rough one.
Well, also, what you don't know when you see the explosions on television until we got real high speeds of it is that the wave propagating from the explosion is so big that it feels like it just like smacks you in the chest when it gets to you. So like, I imagine when that shockwave hit him, it probably took him by surprise and knocked him back a little bit, because I mean, the first time that I felt that, I was like, what? I can't believe that. It's like you can't, and it happens like not right as the explosion happens, but just like barely a millisecond later.
What was one of the moments that you were just like, yes, I nailed it? Like this was a hard myth to put together. It was a hard experiment to get together, but then it just worked out perfectly and you were like, nailed it.
Dude, they were all hard.
Well, honestly, I have to go through a list of every episode. Like one of the most memorable ones where I think we had the biggest visual payoff was Death by Diving, which is one of my favorites, about differential pressures.
Oh, yeah.
And it was about old timey divers with the big helmet diving suits, kind of the Mark V helmets, and they would go down in the pressurized suits. And the myth was there was a hose with a pump on the surface, and we would you'd pressurize the suit as you went deeper and deeper down to keep the pressures of the water from crushing your body. And I remember Tory, it was a multi-stage process because you guys both, I think, made small scale divers that we went out to like SeaWorld or some a marine park to test. And then we did a small scale test. And then Tory, you went insane making this full scale meat man, if I remember correctly.
Meat man.
That was, and it was like a horror show because we had the best human analog I remember, with pig guts and a full size skeleton. And then you took the pig flesh and stitched it all together in a very Frankenstein kind of way.
It did look like Frankenstein.
But you had way too much glee doing that. That was it. You were doing it in the back of a truck. I remember this.
Yeah,
and,
it was a refrigerated truck because we had to keep it cold so that it wouldn't rot.
But when the experiment got underway, I remember being psyched just to find a location that would let us do that. Because to try to sink a meat man in water, there's a lot of considerations to keep in mind, and a lot of it's protected waters, and a lot of agencies want to put their stamp of approval, and getting an ROV, like the underwater remotely operated camera, so we can zoom in on it to make sure we got the shot. That was a total score. And I remember when we purposely failed the valve to simulate the events in the myth, watching the water slowly crush the body, and it was like almost you could almost hear the ribs and the bones breaking. And in the porthole window of the mask, you see blood start to come up, and the body is crunching, and the blood's coming up further. And all of a sudden, you see a liver pop up, and other organs pop up.
All the soft bits started going up into the helmet.
And that was just such an unbelievable payoff. It was really great. And just a postscript on that, when that submersible sadly imploded not too long ago, our myth about that, about differential pressures, was referenced a lot in the media because we explained the concept of what had happened and how quickly that can happen.
They used one of our myths to lobby for air marshals to carry guns on airplanes from our explosive decompression myth, because you could shoot a hole in the fuselage and everybody doesn't get sucked right out. So like, we actually changed policy.
Totally. And then we all became our own individual Cliff Clayton when someone says something silly and we say, well, actually.
Yeah, right, at a bar. Actually, that's not what actually happened. Let me tell you what actually happened.
Yeah. It's annoying, but also kind of cool.
Give us a moment where you just were like, I want to kill these guys, because I know for so many episodes we would push in one direction, and then if it didn't work or somebody changed their mind at the last minute, they'd be like, scrap that, let's try something else. And you were like, I've just lined up all these things for you guys, and now you're just completely changing the script on me.
Yeah, I remember I thought my career was over. Seriously, not a joke. I remember we were doing, it was about package delivery trucks. And is it better to make an unprotected left turn or 3 right turns? And we had mapped this route out all over San Francisco, including Lombard Street, which is one of the crookedest streets in San Francisco. Little actually trivia, it's the second crookedest street for those locals who know. So I remember we got a delivery truck and put, a fake logo on it, and you guys were all wearing jumpsuits and with a fake logo on it, and I think the logo had a bomb on it, if I remember correctly. It was definitely a little suggestive that some trouble was afoot. And we drove it all over San Francisco, and I had cleared that we would end up at City Hall, outside City Hall. That was the victory line. But rather than stopping outside City Hall, you guys ran in. Or was it Grant? I can't remember.
It was
all
Grant.
of you? It was just Grant.
I was driving, so it was Grant that ran in with the box.
So Grant took the unmarked package in his black delivery suit with no permission and ran up the stairs of City Hall and right into security. And I'm like, we are going to get killed. And then I remember getting a call from the film commissioner to say, Linda, what was that? And she's like, we will get back to you with what we're going to do as punishment.
We're going to punish you guys.
And it was there were big meetings, and for days, I was concerned that I would never be able to get another permit again in San Francisco. And thankfully, Lauren Williams, our director, has a lot of connections in some very unusual and wonderful places, and managed to connect with some important people at City Hall who absolved us of any wrongdoing, and my career was unscathed. But it's so stressful.
Well, do you remember driving? It was when we drove down Lombard Street, and it was just like so tight, and I was like going as slow as I could because I was going to get stuck, and I was like peeling out because the road is paved with bricks; it's not asphalt. So the wheels were like spinning out, and we were just like causing a huge traffic jam. And people were coming out to watch, and because I don't know if we had permission to like shoot down there or whatever. But at the bottom of the hill, the head of the HOA came out and was like screaming, furious. They're like, "You guys are making a mess," whatever. And I remember Matt Cordova, our production assistant, was at the bottom, and he goes, "Sorry, we didn't mean to cause a mess." He goes. And he looked at him, he goes, "I know you didn't mean to, but you fucking did." We were like, oh my God, we're gonna get in so trouble.
I absolutely did get a permit. I can guarantee you for that. And that was one of the least fun parts of the job was getting all the permitting and insurance and all that stuff. So we did get a permit, but little did we know, there's always the unexpected. You can't permit for the unexpected. So something always happens.
Mind you, you buy a house on Lombard Street in San Francisco, which is like in every guidebook. You don't expect people are going to be driving down real slow, taking pictures, causing traffic.
That wasn't the problem, though. We did pay the fees that the HOA required us to pay on top of the city fees. But it was that we got stuck. That was the problem.
Because we had this
that truck was too big.
A giant delivery truck going down this narrow, crooked road. It was like, it was a little scary.
It was always a lot easier to get forgiveness than permission when we did these things.
For you, it was. You didn't have to deal with your career being on the line.
I don't know know about that. Do you remember when we did the knock your socks off myth, which is like you can punch somebody so their socks come off, and like it never worked in the shop. So we decided, of course, once again, we'll just do an explosion. So we put a bunch of socks on some mannequins, and we went way back to blow the socks off these mannequins with an explosion. And we were really far back. And mind you, I was really pregnant. So we had to put a big brick wall in front of my stomach so that like there'd be less of a shock wave. That explosion, since we had a cloudy day, that wave propagated instead of up.
Right.
It propagated out. And then it knocked ceiling tiles down. It broke windows. Like it disturbed the next door town. And I just remember the look on your face and the apology tour that you had to go on. And you brought me with you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I figured less people would yell at me or get violent with me if I was
It's
with a
Kari from
pregnant person.
MythBusters.
Yeah, and she's pregnant. Yeah, I used you as the human
pregnant
shield.
lady. Oh, you used her as a shield.
That we have in
Yeah.
common. I did that to Tory all the time. All the time.
But that was something that we had never heard about with the explosions. And you're never supposed to do big explosives on an overcast day because the shock wave goes up and it actually bounces down off of the cloud layer. So that was something that we were just like, what? That's crazy.
Well, we did, believe it or not, we did consult with Sandia National Labs on that, and we did calculations, but I think that the weather didn't go exactly as predicted. And so there was a discrepancy there, and that's what happened. So as much, as many experts and as much research and consideration as you take, you can't account for everything. And that's what happened. Thankfully, let's remind everybody that nobody was hurt. Though people claimed that they fell off their couches and, some people were looking, there was some opportunism, let's just say. But, most of the damage was minor. Although the school did get evacuated because I think thought they were under attack. And so they did evacuate the kids.
Well, because we shattered some of their windows. Like we broke some of the classroom windows and like tiles fell out of the ceiling in the classroom. So yeah, they were like freaked out.
Well, do you remember that our insurance company was the same insurance company as Jackass? And we were considered the safe bet because what they were doing and what we were doing, we were slightly less likely to get personally involved in the explosions.
I don't recall anything we were doing ever actually being turned down flat by our insurers. And I remember asking, knowing that they were insuring Jackass as well, is there anything that you guys have just flat turned down that you refuse to insure? And my recollection is that Steve-O wanted to get liposuction, then cook breakfast in his own body fat and eat it. And I think that was declined.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so good. Yeah, it's hilarious. He's the best.
Oh, that's great. Tory, Tory, well, you have personal experience with those guys and being in their film.
Yeah, I lit his fart underwater.
I mean,
we got very close after that.
Tory, would you eat breakfast that was fried in your own fat?
Hell no, that's disgusting.
As a producer on the show, especially in the early days, we would go to Craigslist a lot to source objects and volunteers and whatnot. And the only ad that I ever posted where I got no response was looking for someone to fart underwater on camera. And that was like the one thing I posted where I got zero serious responses of volunteers.
That is surprising to me considering the things that people ask for on Craigslist. I feel like there would have been a kink out there that was like, yes, I'm into this.
We got to have you back on. You have too many like you have memories that I forgot about.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's a lot of years. And also, there was stuff that, went on behind the scenes just in trying to find locations and objects and come up with story ideas that you guys had enough to handle just doing the building and actually being on camera, which is a whole other skill set that thankfully I want nothing to do with and not good at. And the fact that I'm doing this is you're welcome. But just, we had our hands full trying to, there's a lot of stuff that went on behind the scenes that you probably still don't know about to this day. I would love to have kind of just to sit down and the producers, all of us in one room and just all of us spill our guts on the stuff that, we know that we didn't share with other people for various reasons.
I mean, the reason we wanted to do this podcast is because we always felt like the show behind the show was the actual show. Like it was so much more fun and so more weird and wild than what like our fans actually saw on MythBusters after it was all edited. Like it was a crazy wild time all the time. So I'm so excited that you are our expert guest on the show to just like ground us in all of the weirdness that Tory and I have been through the
Yes,
years.
thank you so much for coming on here and doing this for us.
It's a pleasure. It honestly was it was the best job of my life. I mean, like for 100%. And I had the pleasure of working with you guys who are still big parts of my life. And, I just have such fond memories of it.
Thank you, everyone. This is Linda Wolkovich. She was one of the amazing original producers on MythBusters and probably the craziest person we know that she had to deal with us for 2 decades.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Linda.
That was so much fun. I love talking to people we used to work with.
Linda is the best. Like she literally was like the producer who could make the impossible possible.
I don't think the show would have been what it was without her.
No,
She was a magician.
Absolutely. And like she got the relationship with the bomb range going, and we ended up doing like 90% of our experiments at the bomb range. And it was because of her relationships that she created.
Yeah, and she was also the one that smoothed things over when you and I did dumb stuff and screwed things up.
Whoops.
I mean, I had so many questions for her. I feel like we could have done hours and hours. Like,
Yeah, me too.
We could have talked to her forever.
I feel like we definitely need to get her back on occasionally because it's like there's times where she'll remember something that I completely forgot about, and then it sparks a memory, and it just keeps snowballing.
Well, speaking of questions,
Yes.
it is time for our audience questions. So
Oh, awesome.
I got this one from the direct messages on the Instagram, actually. Cassandra wants to know, I'd love to know what movie scenes in recent years that you would have liked to try to recreate. I feel like every single time I'm watching a movie, I'm like, oh, I wish MythBusters was still around for that.
I know. My God. It's like you're every time, right? TV shows, new movies. It's like there's so many things that we could be testing. What do you think? What do you have?
Actually, I feel like I need to do a revisit because just recently on LinkedIn, I had a guy who wanted us to do a revisit. And I was just like, I wish I still had MythBusters so we could do this. But he and his friends had come up with an entire plan and a schematic and told us that we used the wrong car for the American graffiti myth where they tied their bumper
Yeah,
to
it was
a
like
pole.
the police car. They chained the bumper to a light pole, and then the car takes off, and it just rips the bumper right off.
Yeah, apparently we did the entire thing wrong. And they
Really?
Yeah, it was, I really loved that we had those message boards.
That
like,
never
we
happened.
could, where we could revisit something because we're like, we're not experts. If we did it wrong, tell us. And it was kind of the only show that had such a relationship with its audience like that. Like it was the first to really do that, where it was just like, no, you're part of this. You're learning with us. You tell us how to do this.
Yeah.
Do you have any scenes recently you've been watching and you're like, dude?
Yeah, the movie is Fast and the Furious 7, and there's a scene where they're in, I think they're in Panama where they filmed the scene. But it's basically they're driving a car through an office building. So it's like, like a 90-story building, and they drive out of one office floor, crash through the window, and then crash through another adjacent office building, hit a floor lower, but safely land, get through the windows and safely land and survive this stunt. I watched that and was just like, oh my God, like that would be so incredible. I don't know who would allow us to like drive cars from one office building to another, but I was just like, God, the visual, and could we pull that off? That would be insane.
Yes. I mean, if we just sat there, because we used to do this, like it was never like, could we do this? It was always how we were going to do this. So if we were sitting around in a meeting with everybody, Grant would obviously say, we're going to remote control the car because he always wanted to do that. We're going to have our crash test dummies in the seats, but we could definitely find a ghost town with buildings, and we wouldn't have to do it.
Yes.
Hundreds of feet in the air. We could do this with like the second story and the third story, or like we could do this.
We go to China. Have you seen, there's like in China, there's like all these, complexes that they built and then now they're just like abandoned. God, that would be.
God, I wish we still had a show to do that. I feel like if network executives are watching this at some point, they realize we still have so much we could do. If we could just have one of those bigger budgets.
But I feel like if you wouldn't even need to remotely control the vehicle, like if you just had enough vehicles and you just put a brick on the gas, let it go, eventually you're going to hit the other building at the right angle and land the vehicle. I think.
Yeah, but wouldn't you want to remote control the steering a little bit? Like,
what are you steering through the air? You're not steering anywhere. You're like literally you're going straight out one office building, crashing into another one. I don't think you're going to need to steer much.
Well, if there's anybody who could get us an office building and a whole bunch of cars that we could have run from one to the other and crash all day long, it would have been Linda.
Totally.
All right, that's it for us. MythFits out. Please like, subscribe, follow, all the things you do to keep us on the air. We will be back next week. It has been so much fun going down memory lane with you.
Yes, don't miss out. We got some more crazy stuff coming.
MythFits out.
Pioneer.